No, so you drew some attention in the popular press about, and maybe I'm getting this not exactly correct, but something about like there's more variation within races versus across races. I guess obviously the definition of race could be tricky at times, but this analysis would tell me that there actually is more variation within quote unquote races than the the the, the I think popular notion you were trying to refute.
So the second question is about the degree of variation within and across groups. And I'm in completely agreement with what's been determined from genetics for almost the last 50 years, beginning with a paper by Richard Lewontin, who worked here in 1972, I think, who pointed out that the degree of genetic variation between any two individuals within this room is on average 6 times greater than the average variation between between two groups across the room. So most of the differences that you can appreciate amongst people are much larger than the average differences across groups. I think that perhaps the issues you're referring to are related to the work, the writing I was doing to try to emphasize that while those differences are small, relative to the great differences you see amongst people in this room, they're not nothing. And we need to actually develop a language to actually think about how to accommodate those differences in our public discourse, because if we don't, the geneticists are going to find these differences anyway. And I think that we need to develop a robust way to talk about these small differences that do exist. So farming, one of the findings of our 2016 work is that farming, 11 to 12,000 years ago, developed in a multi-ethnic society world, where different types of crops like wheat and barley or goat domestication happened in different parts of the Near East, all the way from Western Iran to Eastern Turkey to the Levant. And those groups genetically are extremely different from each other. So ancient Iranian early farmers and herders are as different from Eastern Anatolians and Western Anatolians as Europeans and East Asians are from each other.
Those groups genetically are extremely different from each other.
And in fact, 10,000 years ago in this region, there were multiple groups in Western Eurasia, where today there's a lot of homogeneity, that were as different from each other as Europeans and East Asians. So farming was developed in this multi-ethnic society, and in the subsequent few thousand years, these groups all expanded in different directions and mixed with each other and glommed together to form the region of relative homogeneity that we see today. The ancestry that moved into Europe was from the western end of that gradient, the Anatolian farmer-related end, and was very different than the type that moved into South Asia, or that developed or spread in South Asia, which is more related to Iranian farmers. And so what you're actually seeing is not the same population, but different groups that are quite differentiated from each other.
Very different from each other as Europeans and East Asians.